Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Connect, a conversation with Sajith. We would like to warmly welcome you all this evening. We'd like to thank Honorable Sajith Premadasa for being with us today. Winston Churchill once said that success is not final, and failure is not fatal, and that it is the courage to continue that counts. So, sir, first and foremost, we'd like to thank you for having the courage to continue despite all that you've had to endure. Tonight, Mr. Premadasa will share with you all his vision and plans towards building an inclusive Sri Lanka. When speaking of inclusivity and inclusive growth, it is not only about expanding the national economy, but also about ensuring that we reach the most vulnerable people of society, the voices of whom Mr. Premadasa has always spoken for. Inclusive growth also encompasses things like ethnic unity, food security or nutrition, access to clean water and sanitation, sustainability, gender equality, etc. Having given a brief idea of what's in store today, I will hand over to Mr. Rasika Jayakodi, the moderator for tonight, to start the question and answer session. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Mr. Premadasa, for accepting our invitation. Mr. Premadasa is here to talk about his vision for Sri Lanka, the idea of building an inclusive country, shared prosperity, and so on. Before we get into all of that, let me start off this session with a very simple, very basic question. Mr. Premadasa, you are known to be a hard worker. How do you start your day, and what gets you out of the bed every morning?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me today to engage with a cross-section of our citizenry. Well, my usual day commences with a flurry of telephone calls and replies to messages that I've received, since I firmly believe in keeping a close rapport with the people of my country. So usually I'm inundated with messages which consist of proposals, ideas, requests, so on and so forth. And then I move on to continue with the daily activity, which can largely be defined as politics. Politics for me entails serving the people, achieving for the people, adding value to the country, and trying to do my very best to contribute to the creation of a better motherland, a more developed motherland, a motherland that is enriched, and a motherland that is full of prosperity for all. So that's why I start the day. I mean, from beginning to end, it's trying to serve the people.
Now, in the middle of this busy schedule, hectic schedule, do you have time to read books, watch movies, to do things that shape your vision for the country? Things that enrich your knowledge?
Yes, certainly. I try to get myself updated on successful achievements in the political, social, economic and other spheres. Countries that have attained successes and goals with regard to development, human development, and so on and so forth. I am an avid reader. I try to read as much as possible on prevailing theories, especially relevant to economics, urban development and rural development. And I try to keep in touch with the modern day approaches which we see in the world today in order to address problems. I believe very fervently that politics involves providing solutions for the major issues that we all face. And as a solution provider, I would like to be best informed of all the prevailing ideas, thoughts, theories, ideologies, so that I myself am able to formulate my own policy programs, my own policy initiatives, which will address the major concerns of humankind.
With that answer, we can actually open up the floor for questions from the audience. So we have a mic here. The mic will be circulated among the members of our audience. So if anyone wants to raise a question, just raise your hand. ඕනම භාෂාවකින් ප්‍රශ්න අහන්න පුළුවන්. භාෂා ભેදයක් නැහැ.
So there is a big debate in the country about as to whether the 19th Amendment should be abolished and whether the previous status quo with the all-powerful presidential powers should be re-established. What is your view on this? If whatever the result of the general election, would you help Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa to establish the previous status quo?
I am a great believer in the 19th Amendment and its provisions. I believe in the whole system of government. It is very important to maintain a relative balance, a balance between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Of course, there may be certain aspects of the 19th Amendment which we all have to look at in terms of improvement. Whatever the constitutional amendments are, I fervently believe that such amendments should be predicated upon bringing benefit to the country. If there are provisions that are obstacles and inhibitions to effective and successful government, I think we should all look at it. But by and large, I think 19th Amendment provides the basic premise for a good and sound system of government in our country.
Thank you very much.
We have another question.
Good evening. We are looking at a constitution that has been there for 42 years now, which was promulgated by JR. And it has been amended 19 times. Don't you think the problem in our country, the supreme law, is not serving the people? This constitution was made for politicians, not for the people. Shouldn't it be time now to look at a new constitution, a system change? What is your views on that? Without amending further, bring a constitution that is people-friendly, which has separation of power as absolute law, and then there's a separation between the judiciary, executive, and the constitution body. Your thoughts?
There are various opinions in society with regard to constitution making and constitution building. The larger point here, as you quite rightly pointed out, is whatever you do, be it amendments or further amendments, or the formulation and promulgation of a new constitution. We have to focus on the major objectives of such an exercise. You quite correctly pointed out that we all believe in a government by the people, a government for the people, and a government that serves the people. There are a variety of interpretations as to why constitutions are made and amended. And by and large, vast majority of people have a very cynical belief that these changes that have taken place as far as constitutions are concerned are largely to benefit the rulers rather than the ruled. Now, this conception and perception among the people of our country is, I believe, very disappointing. I think the people of this country should have good feelings and good thoughts about one's system of government. However, throughout time, we have seen with major events of corruption, maladministration, and misappropriation, and so on and so forth. You know, the people have become, by and large, disgruntled and highly critical of the system of government and the constitution. So I think whether it's amending the present constitution or formulating a brand new constitution, what is most important is that we should have a refreshing debate within our society. A debate that concerns as to where we are heading as a country, where we ought to be right now as a country. And through that debate, if we can establish a national consensus regarding constitution making and constitution building, I think we can come to an understanding whether we should go for amendments or a brand new constitution. I think first and foremost, either of those two activities should not be done according to the whims and fancies of an individual or a group of people or a small coterie of politicians. Rather, I think it should be people-led, and it should be people-friendly, and by and large accepted by the vast majority of people. And by that I mean irrespective of ethnicity, religion, caste, creed, or any other issue.
Thank you very much.
We have another question over there.
We see that the media today in Sri Lanka is extremely biased. We are inundated with hate speech, fake news, disinformation, both in the state-owned and the private media. And we can't even talk about the social media. What is your stance on how to address this?
I am a true believer in freedom of speech and the freedom of the media. and I'm a big proponent of protecting and preserving the basic human rights of all. Of course, with the kind of free-for-all attitude that one sees in a democracy, you do have miscreants, you do have mischievous activities. You point out to a prevailing problem in present-day Sri Lanka: hate speech, misinformation and disinformation, fake news, and so on and so forth. I believe, and I've always believed, in a system of self-regulation. A system of self-regulation that is practiced by the relevant institutions in the media arena. If one comes forward with attempts at legislating media freedom, I think one embarks on an extremely dangerous course in terms of containing, obstructing, and restricting the freedom of the people of our country. Media performs a very important function in a vibrant democracy. In fact, I would go to the extent of stating that if practiced in a very authentic manner, we could always classify the media as the fourth branch of government. A branch of government that would also implement checks and balances in terms of the system of government. Media is extremely important in terms of pointing out issues which the governors of a country forget and neglect. The media has always been a true force of people's sovereignty and people's government. Of course, having said that, increasingly we see a modern day disturbing phenomenon where some, not all, have strived through the media power that they possess to become kingmakers of a country. I think that would be an extremely dangerous trend. If we have a media that is either monopolized, or if we have a media oligarchy where 3, 4, or 5 institutions, or maybe more, could collude, form themselves into a political cartel, and try to use their powers of persuasion through the dissemination of information, dissemination of selective information, dissemination of chosen information, propagation of ideas and thoughts that would be to the benefit of a particular individual or a political party. That, I would say, would certainly corrupt the system of democracy that we all love. So while being very cautious in terms of interfering with media freedom, while certainly not attempting at all to legislate. Of course, I think there should be exceptions to that particular statement of mine in terms of violence and the propagation of anti-human behavior and activities, while propaganda activities related to such subjects should certainly be restricted. I think it is incumbent upon the media and the various media institutions and the relevant voluntary organizations that exist, that act as non-governmental institutions that check on the media. I think such institutions should be persuaded to ensure that media institutions adhere to a set of moral and ethical principles in their propaganda and dissemination of information activities.
We have a question. Sorry, go ahead, please.
So 52% of the Sri Lankan population are women, but we only have 12 women representatives in parliament. What is your take on this, and what would you do to create a more enabling environment for women to take part in politics?
I think when we compare the demography of our country and the percentage of women in our country and the ensuing figures relevant to participation in government and decision making, we were able to introduce path-breaking legislation which ensured a minimum of 25% representation of women in local government, and this was one of the achievements of the past administration. I do believe that this improvement has to be carried on into the provincial system of government and the central government. And I think that would be extremely crucial in ensuring that the 52% of women in our country, which is the majority of our country, that their desires, their expectations, their dreams are realized, and women's rights and women's needs and wants are put at the highest level in the national political agenda. Now, having said that, I also would like to point out that the manner in which the 25% representation for women was implemented, I would consider to be somewhat erroneous. Why do I say that? Prior to the 25% compulsory representation of women in local government, we had a policy of a compulsory selection of candidates from the youth sector, which I believe amounted to 40%. So when local government elections took place, of the total number of candidates, 40% had to be youth. This particular rule emanated from the Youth Commission, which was tasked during the 1991 period to look into the causes of youth unrest. So they looked at the two youth insurrections that took place in 71 and during the 88-89 period. And they went through all of the details available and recommended that during when local government elections are conducted, there should be a permanent representation of youth candidates amounting to 40% for each relevant council. And this empowered the youth in our society. Now, the mistake that was made during the past administration was the fact that the 40% youth representation at local government election was completely taken off. So it was brought down to 0. And it was replaced by a 25% permanent representation, a permanent allocation of not candidates but membership in the relevant councils for the women at large. So I think that mistake has to be corrected. In addition to the 25% representation that women of Sri Lanka received through legislation, I think there should be an effort to try and have a 25% representation, not necessarily in terms of members, at least allocating 25% of candidates out of the total list, so that there is an opportunity for the youth also to participate in the decision-making processes. And this should be carried out at both local, provincial, and also central government levels.
මම සිංහල භාෂාවෙන් ප්‍රශ්නයක් අහන්නම්. දැන් ඔබතුමා පසුගිය ජනාධිපතිවරණය කාලේ තරුණයන් සමග කාන්තාවන් සමග සමාජ ගිවිසුම් අත්සම් කරා. ප්‍රඥප්තියින් විදිහට. ඒක ඊටාම ඉදිරිගාමී පියවරක් විදිහට බොහෝ දෙනා සමාජයේ ඒ වෙලාවේ කතාබහක් ඇති වුණා. නමුත් ජනාධිපතිවරණයේ ප්‍රතිඵලයත් එක්ක පේන්න තියෙන්නේ තාම ඒ වගේ ඉදිරිගාමී වැඩපිළිවෙල සඳහා සමාජයේ පොදුවේ ගත්තාම නාගරික සමාජය වුණත් සූදානමක් නැහැ කියලා. ඒ අදහසත් එක්ක ඔබතුමා එකග වෙනවද? එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔබතුමාට තාමත් විශ්වාසය තියෙනවද මිනිස්සු මේ වගේ සමාජ ගිවිසුම් එක්ක සමාජ ගිවිසුම් ගැන ප්‍රඥප්තියින් ගැන විශ්වාසය තියෙනවා කියලා?
ජනාධිපතිවරණ පසුබෑමත් සමග මගේ සිතේ තිබෙන ලොකු කනගාටුවක් හැටියට හඳුන්වන්නට පුළුවන් විශේෂයෙන්ම ඇති කරගත්තු සමාජ ගිවිසුම් ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමේ අවස්ථාව නොලැබීම. මට මතක් වෙනවා කාන්තා ප්‍රජාව සමග අපි කාන්තා ප්‍රඥප්තියක් නිර්මාණය කරා. ඒ කාන්තා ප්‍රඥප්තිය තුළ අඩංගු වුණේ කාන්තා පරපුරේ මානව අයිතිවාසිකම්, ආර්ථික අයිතිවාසිකම්, සමාජීය අයිතිවාසිකම් සහ සංස්කෘතික අයිතිවාසිකම් පොදු වශයෙන් ගත් කල විශේෂයෙන්ම එම ජනාධිපතිවරණ ව්‍යාපාරයේ අපි සාර්ථක වුණා නම් අපේ අදහස වූයේ මසක් ඇතුළත මේ රටේ 52% වූ කාන්තා පරපුර වෙනුවෙන් ඒ ප්‍රඥප්තියේ අඩංගු සියලුම දෑ නීතිගත කරන්න. රටේ නීති බවට පත් කරන්න. ඒ තුලින් කාන්තාවකගේ අයිතිවාසිකම් ආරක්ෂා කිරීමේ බරය රටේ නීතියක් බවට පත්වීම තුල ඊ타ත්ම ප්‍රශස්ත තැනකට එනවා. අවාසනාවකට මෙන් අද කාන්තාව සහ කාන්තාවගේ අයිතිවාසිකම් දිහා බලනකොට එදා කරපු ප්‍රකාශයන් සහ අද ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන දේ පිළිබඳව බැලුවොත් බරපතල පරස්පරයක් තිබෙනවා. ඒ කාලවකවානුව තුලදී බොහෝ දේවල් කියවුණා. කාන්තාවන් දසදහස් ගණනින් ලක්ෂ ගණනින් ඒක රාශී කරනු ලැබුවා. අති විශාල කාන්තාවන් ප්‍රමාණයක් ඉමහත් අසීමිත බලාපොරොත්තු මැද්දේ තමන්ගේ සිහින සැබෑවෙන ගමන ආරම්භ කරා. නමුත් අද දවසේ තත්ත්වය මම විග්‍රහ කරන්නට යන්නේ නැහැ. මේ රටේ හැම කාන්තාවක්ම තමන්ගේ හෘද සාක්ෂියට එකඟව හිතලා බැලුවොත් අද යථාර්ථය තේරෙයි. ඒ වගේම තමයි තරුණ පරපුර වෙනුවෙනුත් අපි ප්‍රඥප්තියක් තරුණ ප්‍රඥප්තියක් නිර්මාණය කරලා විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ තරුණ පරපුරට ආර්ථික සමාජීය දේශපාලනික සවිබල ගැන්වීම empowerment of youth ඒ වැඩපිළිවෙල යටතේ නැවතත් වරක් රටක නීති රීති හරහා ඒ සවිබල ගැන්වීම ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්නට මසක් ඇතුළත කටයුතු කරන්නට අපි සූදානම්ව සිටියා. දැන් බලන්න මොහොතකට කාන්තා අයිතීන් වෙනුවෙන් තරුණ අයිතීන් වෙනුවෙන් කීයක් අපේ රටේ කාන්තා පරපුර යොවුන් පරපුර පාලකයෝ පසුපස යනවාද? සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී දේශපාලන ක්‍රමවේදය තුල මා දකින්න මා විශ්වාස කරන ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදය තමයි පාලකින් යා යුතුයි තමන් පත් කරපු ජන ප්‍රජාවගේ දෙපතුල ළඟට දුක සැප විමසලා ප්‍රශ්න ගැටලු විමසලා ඒවාට විසඳුම් ලබා දෙන්නටයි පුරවැසි පරපුර පාලකයෝ කණ්ඩායමක් පත් කරන්නේ. මොහොතකට හිතන්න කාන්තා ප්‍රඥප්තියේ තරුණ ප්‍රඥප්තියේ තිබුණු ඒ වැදගත් යෝජනා සහ කරුණු කාරණා රටේ නීතියක් බවට පත් වෙනකොට નિરાයාසෙන්ම නෛතිකවම යොවුන් පරපුරටත් කාන්තා පරපුරටත් ඒ හිමිවිය යුතු අවස්ථාව ඒ ලැබිය යුතු අයිතිය රටේ නීතිය තුලින්ම ලැබෙනවා. දේශපාලඥයින් ලුහු බැඳ යමින් දේශපාලඥයා ළඟට ගොස් බැගෑපත් වෙමින් තමන්ගේ ආත්ම ගෞරවයක් යම්කිසි ආකාරයකට නැති කරගනිමින් අද බොහෝ අවස්ථාවන් වලදී කාන්තා පරපුරත් යොවුන් පරපුරත් තමන්ගේ අභිමානය අවම කරගනිමින් දේශපාලඥයා ළඟ දනින් වැටෙන තත්ත්වය නිර්මාණය වෙලා තිබෙනවා. අර ප්‍රඥප්තියින් දෙක තුල තිබුණු නීති රීති රෙගුලාසි හරියාකාරව රටේ උත්තරීතර නීතිය බවට පත් වුණා නම් කිසිම කෙනෙක් පසුපස මේ රටේ යොවුන් පරපුරට කාන්තා පරපුරට යන්නට අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. රටේ නීති රාමුව තුල මේ හැම අයිතිවාසිකමකටම සුරක්ෂිත භාවයක් ලැබෙනවා. නමුත් අද අපිට දකින්නට ලැබෙන්නේ බොහොම කනගාටුවෙන් හෝ කියන්නට ඕන කාන්තා අයිතිවාසිකම් පමණක් නොවේ. ළමා අයිතිවාසිකමුත් අද ඇස් ඉදිරිපිටම සහ මුලින්ම නැති භංග වෙමින් යනවා. මම කැමතියි මේ අවස්ථාවේ කාරණාවක් ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න. ඔබත් මමත් අපි සියලු දෙනාත් කුමන ජාතියකට ආගමකට පක්ෂයකට මතයකට ලක් වුවත් අයිති වුවත් හැම දෙනාම පිළිගන්නවා මේ රටේ ජාතික ආරක්ෂාව ශක්තිමත් විය යුතුයි. රටට ආදරය කරන රටේ ස්වෛරී භාවය නිදහස ඒකීය භාවය අගයන හැම දෙනාම මේ මතයේ සිටිනවා. කුමන දේශපාලන පක්ෂයක වුවත්. ඒ වගේම හැම අම්මා කෙනෙක්ම තාත්තා කෙනෙක්ම තමන්ගේ දුවා දරුවන්ට රැකවරණයේ ආරක්ෂාව ලබා දීලා ඒ ලදරු අයිතිවාසිකම් සුරක්ෂා කරන්නට ඉමහත් මෙහෙවරක යෙදෙනවා. එතකොට මම විශ්වාස කරනවා තරයේම පියාගේ ආරක්ෂාවත් මවගේ ආරක්ෂාවත් දරු පරපුරේ ආරක්ෂාවත් ඒ සියල්ලක්ම ජාතික ආරක්ෂාව කියන මාතෘකාව තුල අඩංගු දෙයක්. නමුත් අද අපිට දකින්නට ලැබෙනවා කුඩා දැරියන් අතවරයට ලක් කරලා විවිධ අපචාර ක්‍රියාකාරකම් තුලින් දූෂිත ක්‍රියාවන් තුලින් ඒ කුඩා දැරියන් හිංසනයට ලක් කරලා එවන් පාපතර ක්‍රියාවන් පිළිබඳව ධන බලය සහ වෙනත් බලය නිසා ඒ නීතිමය ක්‍රියාදාමය ක්‍රියාත්මක නොවන තත්වයක ජන සමාජයේ සිවිල් පුරවැසියන්ට සිද්ධ වෙලා තිබෙනවා. බෝඩ් ලෑලි එල්ලගෙන විවිධ රජයේ ආයතන ඉදිරිපිට ගිහිල්ලා අර පුංචි දැරියගේ අර අතවරයට ලක්ුණු ඒ අහිංසක දැරියගේ අයිතිවාසිකම් වෙනුවෙන් උද්ඝෝෂණය කරා. ධර්ම මතක් කරන්නට කැමති වරම ලැබුණේ ජාතික ආරක්ෂාවට. එතකොට මේ ජාතික ආරක්ෂාවේ කියන පුළුල් මාතෘකාව තුළ මේ රටේ ලදරුවන්ගෙත් දරුවන්ගෙත් දැරියන්ගෙත් ආරක්ෂාව සනාත විය යුතු නේද? ඒ දැරියක් දූෂණයට අපචාරයට ලක් වෙනකොට එයට නිසි ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගන්න නැති තත්වයක් තුළ කුමන ජාතික ආරක්ෂාවක්ද කියන ප්‍රශ්නය අද මතුවෙනවා. ඒ නිසා විශේෂයෙන්ම මම විශ්වාස කරනවා මේ තරුණ ප්‍රඥප්තිය කාන්තා ප්‍රඥප්තිය සහ එහි ඇතුළත් ළමා අයිතිවාසිකම් මේ සියල්ලක්ම අපේ දියුණු ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ දියුණු මාතෘ භූමියේ නව රටක් නව ලොවක් කරා යන ගමනේ අනිවාර්යෙන්ම ක්‍රියාත්මක විය යුතු ප්‍රඥප්තිය. අවාසනාවකට මෙන් මම අර මුලින්ම කිව්ව කාරණාව අපේ රටේ දේශපාලන ක්‍රමය තුල තිබෙන ප්‍රධානතම අඩුපාඩුව. ඒ තමයි ප්‍රකාශන සහ ක්‍රියාව අතර තිබෙන ඒ විෂමතාවය, ඒ පරතරය කියන දේ නොකිරීම තුල අද බොහෝ දෙනා නියෝජිත දේශපාලනයේ ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී දේශපාලනය සහ එම ක්‍රමවේදය පිළිබඳව බරපතල සැකසංකා ඇති කරගත් යුගයක් හැටියටයි මම දකින්නේ.
Sir, yeah, I would like to raise my question on two challenges of the many that you would face being Prime Minister. The first of which is now the rapidly spreading coronavirus, which is now gone into Iran, US, and so on, which might challenge our main forms of income. One is the remittances as well as the tourism earnings. So if you, or we hope so, you sit in the Prime Minister's seat, what's your plan to ensure economic sustenance as well as the agility when you know that we might be challenged with our incomes being hampered here? The second challenge is the most obvious challenge over the past 20 years. We've witnessed two scenarios from 2001 to 4 and from 15 to 19, where the executive and the parliament has been from two parties. The first of which was elected and second of which a unity government was formed. And it has always ended up in a collision course, which I don't see it as a good scenario. So in the event you are elected, how do you actually plan on working in unison with President Gotabaya in more or less looking at fostering the betterment of our country? Thank you.
Let me take the first point that you raised, the imminent economic, socio and human threats in terms of the novel coronavirus, the economic consequences of this highly virulent virus spreading throughout the world, and the subsequent economic damage and harm that has caused to all of the countries, especially with regard to Sri Lanka, which we are concerned about. I think there is no easy answer. However, the economic structure of Sri Lanka in itself, I believe, is highly vulnerable to external shocks and threats, such as coronavirus, which nobody expected. It all came out of the blue from the Wuhan province of China. Now, it is always wise, if I may use a phrase, to spread your eggs in several baskets. Diversification of your portfolio. Just look at the export destinations of our country. Our export destinations are primarily dominated by the US, the EU, and the United Kingdom. So there is minimal diversification. If I remember the statistics correct, I think about 50 to 55% of our exports go to these particular groups of countries and individual countries. Now, if the coronavirus, which it seems to be spreading in some of those countries, and consequently it impacts on the economic patterns and behavior of the citizens of those countries, you will automatically have a lowering of economic activity in those countries, which will directly impact on our exports. Moreover, if we look at the issue of raw material supplies for local industries, raw material supplies that are imported from countries that are impacted by the novel coronavirus, I'm afraid I think there's a new connotation, a new name to this virus, which I can't remember right now, but it's popularly known as novel coronavirus. Through the impact of this disease, it has impacted on the raw material supplies, the raw material imports for our country, which would obviously have a detrimental impact, a retardation of economic activity in our own motherland. So we have a highly constricted and restricted export portfolio. I think we have to diversify it. We should embark on a new voyage of going in search for new export destinations and try to conquer emerging markets in South America, Latin America, Africa, in the African continent, and in the Asia Pacific region. That type of diversification of our export destinations will ensure that the impact of this type of unexpected occurrences will have a minimal impact on our country's economy. I, for one, believe that this particular administration lacks the ability to comprehend the prevailing economic challenges that we face. Let me just diverge from the topic that you mentioned as far as the impact of coronavirus is concerned. Kindly observe the highly contradictory economic steps that this government has taken within the space of 100 days. Within 13 weeks, the government has lost 500 to 600 billion rupees in government revenue, while losing state income, government revenue on the one hand. On the other hand, you have the government giving a plethora of unrealistic expectations to the people of the country, saying free fertilizer will be given, an umpteenth number of social welfare programs which will be implemented. So there's a huge dichotomy. On the one hand, the government has embarked on a program of losing government revenue, 500 to 600 billion. And on the other hand, you have the government dishing out promises which encompasses high state expenditure. So there's a huge mismatch, a huge contradiction. So an administration that does not have the adequate economic intellect to comprehend the major fallacies of this contradictory economic behavior, I, for one, cannot even think as to how the government is going to counter the detrimental economic impact of the novel coronavirus. Now, let me come on to the second part of your question. That is, can a government with twin polars of power operate together? The 2001 to 2004 experience and the 2015 to 2019 experience, I'm sure would have not given much confidence to the people of our country in political and government cohabitation. I, for one, sincerely and honestly believe that if one looks at the national interest of our country, and solely on the national interest, not personal interest, not the interest of your close coterie of supporters and favorites, or for that matter, the interests of family members and immediate family. Completely shun that part from governance and look at governance and government from a pure national interest point of view. From a broad perspective, I think it is achievable for leaders of two political parties with sincere intentions, I must say. If your intentions are sincere, if you try to do your very best, your darn best to succeed and make sure Sri Lanka succeeds and ensure that the people's interests are given priority and primacy, I think cohabitation which provides prosperity to the country can be achieved. I must caution, prosperity to the country, not prosperity to the two who are supposed to work in combination to rule the country, not personal prosperity or prosperity for a certain sector of society, but to the whole. I think it's achievable. No doubt it will be very challenging. Of course, the past experiences may cause concern among many in our society. They may come to the conclusion that we have had enough of two such occurrences which didn't end up in total success, although one can point out to certain successes that were achieved primarily during the second episode of cohabitation. But I think the people of this country should look at this issue from a broader perspective. Why not have a bipolar system of governance where, with sincere intentions on the part of both, can bring a lot of success and prosperity to the country, where the two polars of power will themselves check and balance each other so that maladministration, misappropriation, inefficient government does not take place. So I think it's certainly possible. It's a difficult task. It's an onerous task. It's extremely challenging. But where there is a will, there is a way. And I personally believe that we, the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, which I consider to be a path-breaking revolutionary political movement. By revolution, I mean a peaceful, democratic, social and economic revolution that we propagate. We have strived in all our activities to achieve and attain excellence in terms of governance. We will have very high benchmarks. We will try to maintain extremely high standards, and through powers of persuasion and cohabitation, we have no doubt that we could serve our motherland. And I don't foresee in this modern day and age where mankind and humankind have progressed thus far to extremely high levels on all sectors, why we cannot control our personal egotistical tendencies and put the country first, put national interest first. I very sincerely believe that it is very much achievable.
Yes, we have a question.
Good evening. The Honorable Member, as leader of the opposition, I got an opportunity of asking a question from you. Last time I asked a question before you were contesting as a candidate for the presidency. It was bad luck. Your people let you down very badly. I'm sorry to say that, from the party. If not, you would have walked through. The Honorable Member of the opposition leader, I want to know where the President, Honorable Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he came with a pledge, a promise. He told the masses that he will take action against all the corrupt officials. What is happening? Number one. Number two, I must also thank your father, who, if not today, they would have killed me in Japan. And now, I went for an OPA meeting on the treasury bond matter, on the foreseen of the reports, where it was led by Mr. Susiripala Tenakun, and where the former chairman of the court, Mr. Du Gunasekara, also was there. I raised some questions about the treasury bond matter. Now you all have been debating it for the last 4.5 years. So why don't you settle this matter by getting, if that Arjuna Mahendran, who is involved in this fraud, if he cannot be brought in and he is still not coming, so the man who is responsible should be taken to task and he should be arrested. That is what the President should do. And you all also must bring this up as a leader of the opposition, Mr. Sajith, Honorable Sajith Premadasa. You must take this matter up. And the second thing is, where I have been after the election, now he is over 100, now nearly 100 days. Dinesh Gunawardhanan, I thought he was a very straight person. He made me to come to Labour Ministry, to his ministry. Then I went to his house. This is not the way they should behave. I am prepared. I told him I will take him for a debate. Even the Secretary of the Foreign Ministry, Ravinath Arya Singh, he says, well, why don't you go to courts? I said, why the hell I'm sorry to say that, pardon me, why the hell are you here as a Secretary of the Foreign Ministry? You should do your home job work, not necessary for me to. Then other thing is, Honorable Member of the Mr. Sajith, Honorable Sajith Premadasa, what are you going to do for my matter where I have been struggling for the last? It was your father who saved my life. Where Arjuna Mahendran's father, Charlie Mahendran, who was involved, and it was proved. I took Daya Perera from here. When the earlier Secretary, Mr. Bernard Tilakaratna, didn't want to give a retired judge, he said he's going to give me a retired judge. And later he asked me, who is going to foot the bill? I said, I'll foot the bill. And all was sentenced. I took Daya Perera. All was, what are these people doing? The government, nothing. So what is the point? After all, I am trying to help the country. If there is a, you were just saying, if there is a will, there is a way. So that's what I am still fighting for my rights. So nothing is happening. So what is the point? Now I want to come onto the platform and ask the President and the members of the cabinet and the ministers, what
Yes,
are they doing?
I think
Nothing.
your question is clear.
Will you please answer if you don't mind?
I think you raised 3 points. First, let me answer your first point with regard to bringing to book those who have engaged in corrupt activities. I think it is high time that our country had a genuine depoliticized system of anti-corrupt institution devoid of political interference, which is mandated with the sole task of bringing to justice all those who have committed corrupt activities. However much we talk of various structures and systems of good governance, we have seen on most occasions the word good governance and anti-corruption have been words that have been used to fool the people. I think as a country, we must have a novel approach to address this disease of corruption. And we must have an independent institution where no politician, whether it's the president, the prime minister, or anybody else, where they cannot get involved in the process. And we have to insulate that anti-corruption institution from various interferences. So I think, be it the bond matter or anything else, I think all issues of corruption has to be addressed, because these are countries' resources. These resources and funds belong to the people of our country. These are taxpayers' money. These are funds that are generated by the efforts and sacrifices of the men and women of our country. So we have to be mindful of the fact that we need to have a thoroughly fresh approach in terms of addressing corrupt practices and corruption issues. And we have to have a new, novel approach devoid of political and a variety of interferences. I'm sad to say, even though some institutions were set up in the name of good governance, they have not succeeded in achieving the objectives for which they were set up. So I think we have to have a novel approach, an aggressive approach to address this cancerous issue. I perceive corruption to be a kind of a cancer that sucks the energy, the funds, the resources, the assets of the country. And I think it's a very serious issue which has to be addressed. And the day that we have a good ranking in the anti-corruption index, then we can all claim that we have succeeded. Now you mentioned the second point. I comprehended what you said in terms of the fact that you went with a problem to a minister and the problem was not properly addressed, and that you are seeking a better method of redressing your grievance. So if you provide me with the facts and details with regard to your matter, I will personally take it up with the Foreign Minister, Mr. Dinesh Gunawardena, and try to do my very best. And the third point you raised is somewhat related to the second point. So similarly, I would also say that in my capacity as an ex-people's representative, because as you know, Parliament was dissolved, so I'm an ex-member of Parliament, and as an ex-member, I will try to do my very best to solve your issue to your satisfaction.
Before we move on to the next question, I have a brief announcement to make.
Well, the issue of brainwashing, of course, now we have an opportunity to cleanse our brains on the 25th of April, I believe. And you can have a cleansing process as far as the brains of the citizenry of our country. So I have hope that people will engage in a strong, positive and vibrant dialogue with regard to our country's issues. And certainly let's hope that this election will bring about a new beginning for our country. Thanks, you're too kind.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next question, I have an announcement to make. I've been informed by the management that the vehicle number CAS 1948 is blocking the entrance. So if the owner of the vehicle is in the audience, I kindly request you to attend to that matter. Okay, now we can move on to the next question.
Hi, my name is Naren and I'm an academic and also a psychologist. So my question...
Can you please speak up?
Yeah,
Okay,
my question for you tonight is we are currently researching on the inclusiveness of the differently abled population in our country, and so far the results are not really satisfying. So the question would be, in your vision, what exact policies will you be enacting to make sure that the differently abled population is included? And also my second question would be on the mental health well-being, like what policies will you be enacting if you preferably lead a future regime?
I'm glad that you asked this question. If you do remember, I mentioned about two charters, the Youth and the Women's Charter, which we signed as social contracts in order to fulfill the expectations of those two sectors in our society. We formulated a similar charter, a disabled charter. We use the word disabled with the concurrence and approval of the representatives of several societies and associations. So the disabled charter, or the differently abled charter, which we signed, possessed a series of steps in terms of protecting their rights and protecting their needs. And we had formulated a time-targeted approach. Soon after the conclusion of the presidential elections, we had a time-targeted approach to achieve those objectives that were stated in those charters. But unfortunately, the will of the people prevailed with my opponent. And that's also one of the most disappointing aspects, inability to transform and translate the declaratory policies that we enunciated into practical policy implementation. Now, having said that, since I ended up in the opposition, we are bestowed with a privilege through the standing orders to question the government on issues of national importance. So through that provision, as the opposition leader, I raised once again the expectations, rights, and the needs of the disabled stroke differently abled communities in our society, which I believe, according to the stats that were provided to me, close upon 1.7 million, roughly, are impacted. So I did receive an answer. Of course, it was not a time-targeted approach that was mentioned in the answer, but I will still strive to champion the cause of the differently abled communities and citizens of our country. Second, you mentioned the issue of mental health. I think the well-being of people of our country and a focus on the mental health of the people of our country and those who are impacted by mental health issues should be given greater priority in the national health policy agenda. I think a larger proportion of governmental resources should be directed to focus on this particular subject area. And I also perceive that there is a general stigmatization of our society in terms of addressing these issues, such as mental health, such as the rights and needs of the differently abled, disabled communities of our country. One must not forget that they too are citizens of our country. They too have rights. They too have expectations and dreams, which we, as representatives of people who are at the centers of power, should use the initiative to achieve the objectives that are propounded by these two sets of groups. So I am very much cognizant of the importance of attending to the needs and wants of the differently abled in our society and those who are impacted by mental health issues. Sorry, excuse me. I think you better have a...
Yeah, I think we have a...
Sorry.
Another
Give a microphone.
Yeah.
The president appoints the ministry secretaries, and the government is run mostly by the secretaries. So how would the ministers under your leadership, when you become the prime minister, take that, and how would you, like the secretaries mostly behave, work towards their aims, and as a result, most of the time, the country is not taken in the correct direction. So if the politicians are even genuine, how will they be able to run it?
I think you have raised a very, very important issue. From what I gather, the problem that you have is, even though ministers are appointed, the ministry secretaries, as the CEOs of those institutions, they basically conduct the activities. And if I fathom your idea correctly, you see the politicians not possessing the relevant aptitude and acumen to become good ministers, and that the ministry secretaries take a greater role in running those ministries. I tend to agree with what you say. I think if this country is to have a sound system of government, you need to have ministers at all levels possessing an adequate capability to comprehend the various subject areas. I think if one observes the system of government in the UK or in the United States, on a majority of occasions, when cabinets are appointed, or for that matter Singapore, when cabinets are appointed, the intelligence levels, the academic qualifications, the capabilities of the potential ministers are independently assessed, and for the most part, the best and the brightest are appointed as ministers. You know, if one observes the various political satires which I have seen in UK, you know, yes Prime Minister and yes Minister, which exhibits examples where the bureaucrats and the officials run rings around the politician to ensure that decisions do not take place. I think we in this country suffer from this issue. If we have ministers who do not have adequate knowledge in their subject matter, they become hostages of the relevant officials and bureaucrats. If I may say so, let me give you an example from the existing administration. And the economic policies that have been practiced during this 100-odd days or more. You know, on the one hand, there have been reduction in tax rates, which has resulted in losses of 500 to 600 billion rupees in terms of state income. So basically, tax reductions entails providing more money to the individual, more disposable income, so that with that extra disposable income, there's a flurry of economic activity, which in turn will operationalize an urban and a rural economic multiplier effect. So the purpose of tax cuts is to create an economic boom by giving greater disposable income to the individual in society. However, parallel to that, this government also embarks on a program of promises which entails a spending spree. So there has to be a balance. Everything looks one way, whereas it has to be a two-way process. You have government income and you have government expenditure. But here, you're reducing government income and you're talking about various promises, if implemented, would mean increased government expenditure. For increased government expenditure, you need increased government income. So this is a basic facet of economics. Governors of this country and those who control the financial powers should have the minimum knowledge of basic economic principles. If the political champions do not comprehend the inherent contradictions in their policies, the country will be doomed to disaster. So what do we have right now? We have reduction tax rates, which I don't criticize because I believe in giving greater disposable income to the individual, to the manufacturer, to the industrialist, for them to engage in greater economic activity, which would in turn increase exports, increase jobs, create wealth. So I'm in favor of that. But there has to be alternative sources of income to augment and enhance government income so that you fulfill the government promises of greater expenditure on various social welfare policies. So I have to assume that those who are in political power do not understand this basic ins and outs theory of running an economy in the country. So, in fact, I very sincerely believe your premise. The politicians who are appointed to the various ministries should study their subject matter, should learn their subjects, read thoroughly on the subject, and become learned. You don't need to have academic qualifications. I mean, if you burn a bit of midnight oil, and you can self-learn, as my father did as a parliamentarian. He spent hours and hours in the parliamentary library reading on a variety of subject areas. He did not possess the academic qualifications, but certainly he was a graduate of the University of Life, and he learnt on the subject, and nobody could hoodwink him. No official could wrong-foot him, could deceive him, because governmental bureaucrats and officials are people with high academic qualifications, especially in the higher executive levels of government. So I very much believe in your premise that ministers who are appointed to the various ministries and departments and institutions, the institutions that come under the aegis of those ministries, the minister has to be up to date. He should know, he or she should know their facts, should know what they are doing. And the politician being educated on the subject matter is vital to have sound policy and sound government. Otherwise, you will have a bureaucracy having its own agenda and having a momentum of its own, deciding the national priorities, the list of priorities, what should be done and what ought to be rejected. And there you will have the great danger of representative democracy being diluted.
This is a very good cross-section of a multi-ethnic electorate. Now, one could say, without exaggeration, that post-war political regimes, post-war governments, have not made significant progress in addressing the grievances of different communities, not just the Sinhalese, the Tamil and the Muslim communities, very specifically, and also given the fact that at the presidential elections, you got a very clear endorsement, very clear mandate from the Tamil-dominated, Muslim-dominated, and the multi-ethnic Sinhalese, Muslim, and Tamil electorates. You have got a very clear mandate. What is the way forward, and what is the proposed solution of the Samagi Balawegaya on this grave issue?
I did receive large amounts of support from particular regions and areas of our country. But I would like to think that the 5.6 million approximate numbers that voted for me gave me a national mandate. I would not encourage dissecting mandate according to its ethnicity, religion, caste, creed, and so on and so forth. I do believe in what you say, that the multicultural, multi-ethnic society that we live in, we have to address the grievances and the aspirations of all communities, irrespective of religion, ethnicity, caste, creed, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, the primary problem that we face is the very essence of protecting, nurturing, nourishing, and supporting a unitary Sri Lanka. A unitary Sri Lanka that protects and enhances national security is compromised by the fact that we have various political forces that base their political agenda and manifestos on ethnicity, religion, and various other issues that are prevalent in our society. Now, a clear example of the contradictory approach we see in how the present foreign minister, how he spoke on the national election stage, where he prioritized Sinhala Buddhism and did not give adequate credence to rest of the sectors of our society. However, in functioning as the people's representative in the international stage as a foreign minister, he forgets everything that was uttered on the election stage, and he talks about multi-ethnicity, multiculturalism, multi-religion, and multi-linguistic society. Now, here we have the very essence of political double talk. This is what I would call two-tongued politics. Sinhala භාෂාවෙන් කියනවා නම් දිව දෙකේ දේශපාලනය. So you have two types of performances. You have a performance that is choreographed, structured, rehearsed, reviewed, played back, played forward in the internal political arena. However, as soon as you go to the Bandaranayake International Airport, you get into the flight, you start reading your manuscript, what you're supposed to utter on the international stage. In Geneva, I believe. So, soon as you take off, and before you have exited from your own motherland's territorial waters, you completely transform yourself. And you talk of something totally opposite to what you proclaimed and to what you declared on the local political arena, and you dance to the tune of the international political agenda. So, I for one very sincerely and fervently believe that Buddhist principles teach us to protect, to take care of everyone in society. සියලු සත්වයෝ නිදුක් වෙත්වා. සියලු සත්වයෝ නිරෝගී වෙත්වා. සියලු සත්වයෝ සුවපත් වෙත්වා. So, when we are talking of good health, well-being, prosperity, it's for everybody's prosperity, everyone's well-being, irrespective of caste, creed, ethnicity, or one's religious persuasions. So, the typical political double talk practices that exist in our country are one of the major causes to the persistent and continuous deterioration of our socio-political economic culture of our motherland. I believe in a unitary Sri Lanka. I believe in a Sri Lanka where Buddhist principles are practiced to the letter. without misinterpreting, without reinterpreting, causing disgrace to the Buddhist philosophy. And that philosophy entails that equal and proper protection has to be given to all citizens of our country. You cannot have a system where you have first-class citizens, second-class citizens, third-class citizens, and so on and so forth. That's a violation of our constitution. All citizens are equal. So, within secure borders, while enhancing and protecting national security and protecting the unitary nature of our country and constitution, we must empower all citizens politically, economically, socially, and culturally. You know, we talk of sovereignty. We also talk of a strong and secure Sri Lanka. One has to understand, by the mere fact that the word unitary is mentioned in the constitution, that by in itself does not protect our motherland. The unitary principle should be in the hearts and minds of the vast majority of the citizens in our country, be they Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim, or any other. The unitary character should come from the hearts and minds of the people. And all citizens should feel safe. All should feel that this is our motherland. This is our country. There is no differentiation, no division, no categorization. So, if given the chance, I would certainly practice the authentic Buddhist philosophy, which prescribes protecting all. I hope I answered your question.
Before we move on to the next question, I must remind you all that we have only 5 minutes more to conclude this session, so we can probably take one more question. So if you keep your question short, we can probably accommodate 2 questions.
Okay, Mr. Premadasa, I have actually 2 questions. I hope to contribute. This is to do with the judiciary, which not thanks to Vanshop Ranja, but because everybody talks about the problems of delayed cases and all this sort of thing. So my 2 questions are this. One, if there is any member on the judiciary on the bench who has allegations of corruption of some form or the other, do you honestly believe that they should be permitted to hear cases or get a promotion or something like that? That's the first question. The second question, earlier you talked about economics and the income and all this sort of thing. Now there are cases like the BMW case where the loss was more than the bond case, and so many other cases where the judges are reclusing themselves from the cases.
Which case?
BMW vehicle case.
Okay.
Right? The total amount is some 16 billion, something much more than the bonds came. And so many other cases like the palm oil case and all this sort of thing. So the judges don't hear the case, they keep on postponing the case for whatever reason. So again, the country loses out. So my questions are, questions on those 2 are based on what your candid views are on this subject, and also how you would hopefully change the system, hopefully if you get into power. Thank you.
As far as in the legal arena, when we look at the principles of natural justice, I strongly believe in the concept of innocent until proven guilty. So that's the standard by which I would judge anyone in society. Of course, in the judiciary, we should always uphold higher standards, and all members of the judiciary should practice in a manner that does not compromise or bring into disrepute and thereby promote the distrust and mistrust that may be encouraged by such activities. So I do agree that everyone in our society is innocent until proven guilty. Having said that, I think when it comes to members of the judiciary, they should uphold the highest of morals and ethical principles, and they should try to adhere to higher standards and try to ensure that one's own position and profession is protected and taken care of. As far as the judicial processes are concerned, I think there is room and scope for judicial reform. However, judicial reform should not be enacted according to the whims and fancies of politicians. Preeminent personalities and authorities and experts and specialists in the judicial arena should be mobilized and consulted as to the best and the most efficacious methodology to embarking on a judicial reform process. So I think time has come for significant judicial reform. I think the previous administration took a giant step in terms of enhancing and increasing the remuneration levels and salaries and wages of the judges, which I think would promote and facilitate a cleaner judicial system. However, there's much more to be done. I think there should be a speedier process in the administration of justice. I think more efficient methods should be used in the management structure. Better training and resources in terms of human resources in our judicial structure has to be addressed. By and large, I think we have a sound judicial system. By and large, our judicial system is not corrupt. Most judges, I believe, are sound-minded, principled. I believe the greatest majority qualify for that accolade. Of course, as in any system, any structure, and in any profession, you have the usual outliers. I mean, you find many an outlier in the political arena. If we are to believe the people, absolutely everyone bar none are qualified to be this outlier, the corrupt outlier. But I think by and large, we can be proud of our judiciary, and we can be satisfied with the judicial system. Having said that, I think time has come for a new approach, a new outlook, and a path-breaking program in terms of judicial reform, which provides redress to those who are aggrieved through a speedier system. Because right now, I think there is a huge backlog, backlog of cases, which the present system has been incapable of addressing. So speedier decisions, fairer decisions, efficient systems, better training, better provision of more skilled human resources and physical resources, greater accountability and responsibility on the part of judges. These are all aspects that we should promote through a systematic and systemic process of judicial reform.
Okay, a last question for tonight from this gentleman.
My name is Dr. Imtiaz Latif, and royalist widely junior to you. I think you remember me. I'm a homeopathic practitioner. I came to you when you were the Deputy Health Minister some time back regarding the Homeopathic Council. But actually, I'm very unfortunate to say, it is your father who first started the first homeopathic free clinic when my father was in the Medical Council. But after that, Minister Dayaratna, as you said, he was very intellectual, he was very engineer. He started a hospital. Now we have the only government hospital in Sri Lanka. It's a homeopathic hospital in Valisara, and few clinics in district level. But what I'm trying to say is very unfortunate. Whenever some development is taking place, either the government changes, or cabinet shuffle, or ministry official change, or secretary changes, we are really unfortunate. So far, nothing has been done for homeopathy because of this. Because when the minister changes, we have to go and explain from the beginning, agreeing. Again, he takes some interest, and when he tries, again, he is changed. Then when the secretary is changed. So every time, it has to go from the beginning, but nothing happened. Even up to now, still, it is still in existence, but no development. Homeopathy is popular all over the world, especially India, and so they have done wonders. We have done wonders. But we have over 300 doctors in Sri Lanka, but still, after the new act came, Minister Rajasena, he brought the new act. That took 10 years after formulating the act. And when that the new council was formed, only for 3 years. After that, again, the new council has been elected, still nothing happened. Now everything is just standstill, and for homeopathy is not being considered at all. So how do you think that you could do something to give more due recognition as an alternative system? And it's one of the most advanced systems in all of the country. So how you can help us?
Unfortunately, right now, politically, we are in a phase of a transition. It's a transitionary time period. And hopefully, if the good citizens of our country, in good faith, bestow the responsibility of running the government, together with the elected president, I shall take good note of the issue that you just raised. But the most significant point that you raise is the lack of continuity in government. The constant and persistent changes that take place acts as a kind of a resource drain and a strength drain to the country. In recent times, it has become the usual practice of multiplicity of governments and administrations to roll back good policies, sound policies that were enacted by the predecessors. Unfortunately, we see that in this administration too. So for that, as a democracy, first and foremost, we all have to mature. Sometimes we behave in an extremely immature manner. So political maturity is of utmost importance. And you have to appreciate, you must have the heart and the broad-mindedness to appreciate the good work that your political opponent has done. I, for one, have never ever hesitated to say good things, positive things about my political opponents when they have achieved. For example, I have always, even on election stage, I've always congratulated my opponent for the war victory that was achieved in 2009. So these are basic facts of life. Unfortunately, that political maturity is very much lacking, I'm sad to say, in this present administration. And, you know, large numbers of people in our country, in hundreds of thousands and millions of people, gave their mandate to promote sound decision making, have a more professionalization approach towards governance. So you had so-called movements such as Viatmaga, which encouraged and promoted professionals to come into positions of power so that the correct sound decisions are made in those various positions of responsibility. So, having talked about Viatmaga on political stage, when the second most important citizen of our country, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, makes his first visit after the presidential elections, you have the highly embarrassing situation of one of the members of parliament who is a participant in the entourage congratulating Rahul Gandhi in being the grandson of the late great Mahatma Gandhi. So by that very action, I am sure the Indian people would have gauged and ascertained the intellectual capacity that was represented by the Sri Lankan delegation. So here again in Sri Lanka at a presidential election, you have this very attractive word, Viatmaga. But unfortunately, I didn't see much Viatness in our delegation to India, where you had the extremely embarrassing situation where this statement was uttered. And as a consequence of that, I'm sure the Indian people will also evaluate and come to a conclusion of the standards of our foreign ministry. When you go on a delegation representing your own country, what ought to happen, what should happen, is that the delegation should be properly briefed, given proper information, what ought to be talked, and what subject areas that one should be familiar with? I mean, I'm encouraged to ask the question, are these delegations properly briefed prior to a trip? So, unfortunately, I don't see much Viatmaga in the present administration. One wonders whether, even though a singular political movement was voted in, sometimes I wonder whether there's a bipolar system actually taking place within one power structure, where one half is trying to go Viatmaga and the other half is trying to go Miriskudu Viatmaga. So that's something that the people of Sri Lanka should think in a very unbiased, non-prejudicial and balanced manner. Thank you.
Unfortunately, with that answer, we have come to the conclusion of this session. We'll continue to have these sessions in various parts of Colombo in the coming days. And hopefully this initiative will create a network of professionals around Mr. Premadasa and his new political movement. I would now like to call upon Danushka Fernando, a member of our organizing team, to deliver a brief vote of thanks, and after that Chamatka will make closing remarks.
I would like to just take a moment to thank all of you for being here with us. We specially created this platform called Connect in discussion with Sajith, so that all of you, especially the professionals, to engage in conversation with the Honorable Sajith Premadasa and express ideas. Because what we've seen, a lot of people create quite a lot of negative comments and negative information, misinformation on social media especially, which is impacting number of politicians in different ways. So we believe this would be the starting point of a platform that will get people to be engaged in close conversation with Honorable Sajith Premadasa. And as Rasika very correctly said, we want to continue this effort. So we definitely would like your support. Please go and like our page on Facebook. Plus, we have your information and we will get in touch with you all. We want this to be an engaging platform. This is just the start of the platform Connect. And I want to thank Rasika Jayakodi for moderating the evening today. And of course, Honorable Sajith Premadasa for being here with us and enlightening us about his vision and some of the plans that he's planning to take forward for the betterment of our country. And with that, once again, thank you all for being here, even though we got a little late to start off the evening. I'm sure it was very much enlightening to all of you all. And if you all couldn't get any answers, definitely there will be future sessions and we want to continue the effort going forward. So with that, I will hand over to Chamatka to conclude the session. Thank you.
That marks the end of a very fruitful discussion tonight. Very briefly, I would like to thank Mr. Premadasa for very candidly speaking to everyone present here. I hope you all go back with a better idea of his views and his aspirations for this country. Thank you all for being here tonight. Good night.